The bell that rang for me had not been rung in 7 years. It was the deep iron one that hung above the Alpha King's private wing, the one that called only his most trusted attendants, and I was not one of them. I was the girl who mopped behind the feasts, the girl the other handmaidens moved around like I was a draft slipping under a door, the girl whose tray no one offered to carry and whose name no one troubled to learn. So when the head steward found me in the scullery with my hands in a bowl of cold water and said, "The king has asked for you," I thought I had misheard him. I had not. He was looking at me like I had done something. "Me? Dry your hands. Change your apron. He does not like to wait." I dried my hands on my skirts because I could not feel the towel. The scullery was hot from the ovens, and yet my skin had gone cold, the way bodies go cold before something is asked of them that they will not survive. I was not supposed to be seen. That was the whole point of me. Stay low, stay quiet, disappear into the walls. That was the shape my mother had poured me into before she died, and I had held that shape my whole life. I had poured wine into the cups of lords who had never once looked at me. I had passed within a breath of the Alpha King himself in the corridors, and he had walked on as if nothing stood in his path. That was the safe way. Now he had asked for me by name. "Why?" I whispered. The steward shrugged. "He does not explain himself. Go." The corridor to his wing was a long spine of black stone. I had never walked it before. The torches were set too far apart, and the shadows between them were the size of men. I could hear my own footfalls, the soft shush of my skirts, and, beneath that, the loud, frightened thudding of a heart that could not keep up with my feet. 2 guards stood at the final door. They did not speak. One of them pushed the door open without looking at me. "Go in," he said. Inside was a hearth that had nearly gone out. A low table, a map weighted at its 4 corners by daggers, and the Alpha King standing at the window with his back to me. I had seen him before. Of course I had seen him. Everyone in the keep had seen him. He was the reason half the kingdoms to the north still slept with iron across their thresholds. He was taller than any man should be, shoulders so broad they blocked the moonlight in the window, hair black as wet stone. He did not turn when I came in. He did not move at all. "Alpha," I said, and folded myself into the lowest bow I had in me. "You sent for me." He did not answer. The fire popped. I kept my eyes on the rushes scattered across the floor. My heart was doing an unkind thing inside my chest. "Step closer," he said. His voice was lower than I remembered. Not cruel, just tired in a way I did not understand tired could sound. I took 3 steps and then a 4th. The fur rug gave softly under my shoes. Closer. I took 1 more step. He turned then, and I forgot how to breathe. Up close he was not an alpha. Up close he was a wound in the shape of a man. There were dark hollows beneath his eyes so deep they looked bruised, and a tightness along his jaw as if he had been clenching it for a long time and had forgotten how to let it loosen. His eyes were the color of iron warmed in a forge, and they were fixed on me in a way I had never been looked at in my life, not by anyone. He took 1 slow breath, then another. Something in his shoulders dropped. It was a small thing. A stranger would not have seen it. But I had spent my whole life watching the bodies of powerful men so I could stay out of their way, and I saw the moment his shoulders came down out of his ears, the moment the tendon in his throat eased, the moment his hand, which had been half a fist at his side, opened. He looked like a man who had just been allowed to set down something unbearably heavy. "Say something," he said. "Alpha, anything." My mouth dried up. I don't know what you want me to say." A sound came out of him that was almost a laugh. It was not a kind sound. It was the sound of someone who had forgotten what laughing was for. "What is your name?" "Nira. Nira," he repeated, like he was testing whether the word would cut him. It did not. He took another long breath. His eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened, the iron in them had cooled into something else. "You will stay. Stay, Alpha." Here, in this wing, you will be assigned to my rooms. My hands had started shaking. I hid them in my apron. Alpha, there are handmaidens far more trained than I am. I only ever served in the lower halls. I have never attended a lord, let alone a... I did not ask whether you were qualified. I closed my mouth. You will be moved tonight, he said. Tell the steward I said so. He will not argue. Yes, Alpha. He had not stopped looking at me. That was the part I could not understand. He was looking at me as if I were a window someone had finally thrown open in a room that had been sealed too long. As if he could, for the first time in a long time, breathe. I did not know what I was to him. I did not know what had changed in this room when I walked into it. I only knew that my mother had told me, the night before she died, to never ever be seen. And the Alpha King was seeing me. Raiden's POV. She had no scent. Not faint. Not hidden beneath soap or fear or the sharp green of the palace herbs. Not the thin, watery scent of someone sick. Nothing. Where she stood, the air was empty in a way I had not known air could be empty. My wolf, who had not been quiet inside my chest in 7 years, went still. He had been screaming since my father's funeral. Screaming through every council, every treaty, every woman I had let near me and then sent away because their scents made his teeth come down. Screaming through the scented petitions of lords who reeked of greed the way other men reeked of sweat. Screaming through the mothers offered to me at the solstice. Screaming under the blood moon when the other alphas had come to watch me take a mate, and I had stood there in my skins and scented nothing I could bear, and walked off the dais and into the woods and torn 3 stags apart before morning. He had been screaming so long I had stopped hearing him as noise. He was just the sound my blood made. He was the thing I carried. Then the girl had stepped into my rooms, and he had gone quiet the way a man goes quiet when a knife is finally pulled out of him. I did not know her. I had seen her somewhere, once. Passing behind a tray, maybe, or kneeling to clean a stain in some corridor I had swept through. She was small. She was pale in the way people go pale when they have spent their lives hiding from the sun. Her hair was a dull brown. Her eyes were the soft color of river stone. There was nothing about her, looking at her the way one looks at a woman, that should have done anything to me, but I could not smell her. Do you know what that is for a wolf? It is not absence. It is not emptiness. It is peace. The kind of peace I had forgotten existed. The kind of peace my mother used to press into my forehead when I was small and frightened, with her hand across my eyes and her thumb on my brow, saying, "Breathe, my son, breathe, my boy, breathe." I breathed. I breathed the way I had not breathed in 7 years. And I looked at the small, frightened girl standing in my rooms, and I knew, the way a starving man knows the sight of bread, that I was not going to let her leave me. I should have. I knew I should have. There were too many reasons something like her should not exist. A wolf without a scent was not a wolf at all. A human without a scent was a thing to be mistrusted, a body that had been tampered with, a seal somewhere under the skin. My father had killed women for less than that when I was a boy. My father would have killed her before I could pull her out from under his knife. The old lords of the inner council, the ones who whispered about bloodlines and purity and the old laws that were older than the kingdom itself, would want to know what she was before they let her breathe near me. I did not care. I looked at her hands, twisting in her apron. I looked at her throat, her pulse jumping hard under the thin skin there, because of me, because I had frightened her simply by turning around. I looked at the way she was trying so desperately to be small, and my wolf, who had been screaming for 7 years, curled up against my ribs and slept. "You will stay," I said. I heard her trying to argue. I heard the reasonable, trembling voice of a girl who was about to lose the invisible life she had built for herself. I did not care about that either. I was tired. I was so tired. I had not slept a full night in 7 years, and she had walked into my rooms and the air had gone soft, and I had realized, with a clarity that frightened me, that if she walked out I might not survive another week in my own skin. "You will be moved tonight," I said. When she was gone, I sat down on the edge of my bed for the first time in 3 days. I put my face in my hands. My hands smelled of smoke and steel and my own animal. For the first time in 7 years, I wanted to sleep. I could not think about what that meant. I could not think about what she was. I could not think about why a girl I had never met had broken my wolf the way a hand breaks a horse. I could only think that I wanted her back in the room. I rang the bell again. Nira's POV. They did not like me in the upper wing. That was a soft way of saying it. Nira's POV. They did not like me in the upper wing. That was a soft way of saying it. The senior handmaidens had the kind of politeness that could strip bark. The steward who had fetched me from the scullery gave me a small room off the king's dressing chamber with a bed and a trunk and a single candle, and told me, without meeting my eyes, that my duties were whatever the king said they were, and that I was not to speak to anyone about anything that happened in his rooms. Ever. I nodded. I nodded a great deal that first night. When he rang for me again before dawn, I went. I don't know what I expected. Orders, instructions. Some task that would explain why, of all the trained women in the keep, he had wanted the scullery girl. What I found instead was the king sitting at his writing table with a stack of sealed scrolls in front of him, his hair unbound, a goblet beside his wrist that he had not touched. He did not look up. "Sit," he said. "Alpha? There." He pointed with the quill to the chair on the other side of the hearth. "Sit." I sat. He went back to his scrolls. That was the whole of it. I sat in the chair by the fire with my hands folded in my lap because I did not know what else to do with them, and he wrote. He broke seals and read and occasionally set one aside with a small, bitten-down sound in his throat. He did not speak to me. He did not look at me. The dawn came gray through the window and then gold, and still he wrote, and I sat. My eyes burned with the effort of not falling asleep. When the light was full on the floor, he put down the quill. He let out a breath I felt more than heard. "You may go," he said. "Alpha, did you need me to do something? You did it." I did not understand him that morning. I did not understand him the next, or the one after that. He did not ask for tea. He did not ask for reading or music or company of the kind that might be expected. He did not touch me. He did not look at me often, and when he did, it was always quickly, as if he were checking a door was still shut. What he did was ring the bell, and I went, and I sat in the chair by the fire, and he did his work, and then sometimes, after a long time, he put his head down on his folded arms on the desk and slept. Once, he came in late from a long council, and stood in the middle of the room with his hands at his sides, as if he had forgotten why he had walked through the door. I was at my chair by the fire. I had been half asleep. I stood. "Alpha, Ryden," I hesitated. "Ryden, do you need... Take this off." He lifted one arm a little and let it drop. His doublet, the heavy one with the silver clasps down the front, the one he wore to the council chamber so the old lords would know he outranked them by the weight of his shoulders alone. I can call your valet, Renach." "No, you." I came to him. I had never undressed a man. I did not let him see that I had never undressed a man. I reached for the topmost clasp, and my fingers were clumsy, and I fumbled, and I got it open, and the next, and his breath went slow above me the way an animal's breath goes slow when it is being brushed. "Slower," he murmured. "I'm sorry. No, slower. There is no hurry. That is the thing." I did it slower. I unclasped him the way I would have unbraided a rope. One at a time, one at a time. When I got to the last one, I pushed the doublet back off his shoulders and caught it against my forearms before it could fall, and the weight of it almost brought me to my knees. I had not known his coat was that heavy. I had not known he wore that much metal under the velvet. No wonder his shoulders were always in his ears. "Ryden." I had to say it. "Yes." "How long have you been carrying this?" He did not pretend not to know what I meant. 7 years, he said. I took it to the chest and set it down. I came back. He had not moved. He was in his shirt now, the thin one, and I could see the lines of him, the shape of him, the unfair animal of a man my body had not known how to look at until it had been given permission. I kept my eyes on his throat. "Sit down," I said. He sat. I do not know what came over me. I do not know what gave me leave. I went behind his chair and I took down his hair, which he wore bound at the nape of his neck in a heavy black cord, and I let it fall through my fingers and I worked my hands into it, slow, at the scalp, the way my mother used to do for me when I was little and could not sleep. He made a sound, a low, broken sound low in his chest, the sound a great tired thing makes when the weight comes off its back. I stopped, frightened. "Keep going," he said. His voice was not quite steady. I kept going. I worked his hair out of the knots it had been in for weeks. I worked my fingers against his scalp until his head had tipped back against my stomach. I worked until his jaw had loosened and his shoulders had finally come down. I worked until he had gone so soft against me that if I had moved he would have fallen. I did not move. I stood there with an alpha's head against my belly for I do not know how long. The fire went low, the candles burned down. His breath went long and even, and I realized he had slipped into sleep sitting, against me, and I could not pull my hands away because I was afraid he would wake up, and the tiredness in my heart was not mine, it was his. It was seeping into me through the bond we did not yet have, and I was going to stand here, I was going to keep standing. Here, until morning, if I had to. I stood there until morning. He did not wake, he only breathed. And I stood with my hands in his hair and my heart trying to make room, in my chest, for something it had not been allowed to feel before. Back in my bed before dawn, I put my face into my pillow, and I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes until I saw stars, because I had understood in the standing what my mother had meant by "do not be wanted," and I had understood it too late. The king had rung the bell, and I had gone, and I had not been the same when I came back. He slept. The whole keep had been whispering about it for years. The king does not sleep, the king has not slept. The king will die on his feet. I had heard it in the corridors my whole life. And here, in the early hours with no one watching, he slept. His breath went deep and slow. His hands, which during the day were fists, opened. His mouth, which I had never seen anything but tight, softened into something I could almost have called boyish if I had been brave enough to keep looking. I did not wake him. I did not move. I hardly breathed. I did not know why he could sleep near me. I was terrified of the answer. My mother's voice came back to me, clearer than it had been in years. She had taken my face in her hands the last night, and she had pressed her forehead against mine, and she had said, "Neera, listen. You must never be wanted. You must never be loved. Do you understand me? The world does not have room for what you are. The world has no soft place for my girl. Be empty, be nothing. Be the shape of a girl and nothing more. Swear to me." I had sworn. I had held that oath so tightly I had forgotten I was holding it. And now the Alpha King rang his bell, and I went, and I sat in a chair by his fire, and he slept. "Neera." His voice had come out of the dark. I startled. He had woken without me noticing. He was watching me from the desk, his cheeks still resting on his arm, his eyes half-lidded the way a great cat's eyes half-lit in the sun. "Alpha? Come here." I stood. My legs had fallen asleep from sitting still so long, and I nearly stumbled. He saw it. Of course he saw it. I came to the desk. Closer. I came closer. He did not sit up. He did not move. He only reached, slow, as if he thought I might flinch, and took the edge of my apron between two fingers. Just the edge. Just the fabric. He closed his eyes. "Tell me your mother's name," he said. My stomach dropped. "Alira Alpha." "Alira." He said it softly. He did not open his eyes. "From where?" "The western villages. She came to the keep when I was small. She died when I was 8. Of what? I swallowed. Fever, Alpha. It was not true. It had never been true. But it was what I had been taught to say, and I had said it for so many years that the lie had worn a groove into my mouth, and I said it now without thinking. He hummed. He did not open his eyes. His fingers did not let go of my apron. You may go back to your chair, he said. I went. He did not sleep again that dawn. He sat at the desk with his cheek on his arm and his eyes on the fire, and I sat in the chair on the other side of it, and neither of us spoke. I do not know what he was thinking. I do not know what my mother's name had done inside his head. I only know that when the bell rang for morning meal and I rose to leave, he said without looking at me, "You will be here again tonight." It was not a question. Yes, Alpha. Ryden. I stopped at the door. When we are alone, he said, that is my name. Ryden's POV. She had been lying about her mother. I had let it pass. I had let it pass because Ryden's POV. She had been lying about her mother. I had let it pass. I had let it pass because the lie had been small and old, and because her pulse had jumped so hard under the thin skin of her wrist when I touched her apron that I had not wanted to press her any further that night, for fear of what would happen to me if she fainted and had to be carried out of the room by someone else's hands. But I had heard it. Wolves can hear a lie. It is a soft, crooked note under the words. Fever, she had said, and her heart had said no. Something had killed her mother, and it had not been fever. And her mother had been a Western woman, but not with a Western name. Alira was not a Western name. Western names were short and flat and ended in hard sounds. Alira had the cadence of the old coastal orders, the ones that had been burned out of this kingdom before I was born, the ones whose women had worn white and taken no mates and walked the edges of the world doing things other people could not do and would not speak of. I did not tell her I knew. I did not tell her anything. I watched her, instead, the way you watch something wild you do not want to startle. She was small. She was careful. She moved through my rooms as if she had been taught how to take up no space, and she had been taught well. She did not look at my books. She did not look at the window. She did not look at me unless I asked her to. She sat in the chair by the fire with her hands in her lap, and she kept her eyes on the rug. And near her, I was quiet. I had forgotten how much noise there was in my head. In the council chamber without her, the lords stank of what they wanted from me, the ropey, overripe smell of ambition, the sour milk smell of fear dressed up as loyalty, the iron and copper smell of men who were already imagining which of their sons I might adopt as heir. I could hardly stand it. I could hardly hear the words they were saying for the smells that were saying the other thing underneath. I had started sending for her during council. At first I had done it in small ways, an excuse about wine, an excuse about the fire, a message to be sent to my private quarters, carried only by her, so that she would have to step into the chamber, bow, and wait to be dismissed. She would stand by the wall. She would keep her eyes on the floor, and my wolf would lie down, and I would think again, and the lords would keep talking, and none of them would know why the king was suddenly patient where an hour ago he had been on the edge of leaving the table with his teeth bared. They noticed her, of course. The lords noticed her. Old Malek, the grey one, the one who had buried 2 of his own wives and 3 of his daughters and still somehow considered himself an authority on matters of the bloodline, cleared his throat at the end of one long, pointless session and said, "Alpha, the girl. What of her? A handmaiden from the lower halls, is she not?" "She is." One wonders what service she renders that warrants her presence at council. I looked at him. He was a man with a great deal of power and more history than most. I had known him my whole life. He had held me in my christening. He had buried my father. I let my eyes go yellow. He lowered his. "One wonders," I said very softly, "if one is curious enough to ask again." He did not ask again, but I felt the way the chamber had cooled around her. I felt the way the other lords had not quite looked at her as she bowed and backed out of the room. I felt it, and I did not like it. There was a scent I had begun to notice on some of them when they spoke of her. A scent I had smelled on men before they did things that made me have to hang their heads from the southern wall. That was the night I began to go looking for her myself. I found her in my library, which surprised me because no one came into my library uninvited and she had never been invited. She was standing at the low shelf by the window where the light fell best, with one finger just barely touching the spine of a book she was not opening. She was looking at it the way a starving woman looks at bread through glass. She felt me. She turned. "Alpha, I'm sorry, I shouldn't." "Raiden. I'm sorry, I saw the light, and I thought someone had—" "Take it." "What?" "The book. Take it." "I can't read, Alpha, Raiden. I was only looking." I had not expected that. It landed in my chest harder than it had any right to. "Come here." She came. I took the book down. It was a small, soft-bound thing, old, one of my mother's favorites, a book of sea stories from the coast. I did not think about that, choosing it. It was only what was in my hand. I pulled the chair from the desk and set it by the window where the light was best. I sat down. I opened the book across my knee. "Stand here," I said, and pointed at the place beside my shoulder. She stood there. I could not smell her. I could only feel the soft warmth of her breath when she let it out. I put my finger on the first line. "This letter," I said, "is A. This letter is L. Put them together and they say Al. This letter is Raiden. S. Alice. Say it." "Raiden, you don't have to—" "Nira." She stopped. "Say it." "Als." She whispered. "Good." I could feel her standing very still beside me. I could feel her trying to understand what was happening to her. I could feel, without looking up, the first small tremor in her hand where it had come to rest, almost without her knowing, on the back of my chair. Her knuckles brushed the edge of my hair. My wolf stretched under my ribs like a great warm cat. I read her the next word. I read her the word after that. I did not look up at her, because if I looked up at her, I was afraid I would do something I could not take back. Outside the window, the moon came up. Inside, the small, scentless girl whispered sounds she had never been allowed to know, and the king of a kingdom that would have burned her for existing held the book steady on his knee and wondered, for the first time in his life, what it would mean to choose a woman the world would not survive his choosing. Nira's POV. He began to touch me. Not the way a man touches a woman. Not yet. I'm not sure he had allowed himself to know that was what was happening. He touched me the way a child touches a stone he has found in a riverbed, absently, repeatedly, as if to reassure himself the thing were still there. His fingers on the edge of my sleeve, the backs of his knuckles brushing mine as he passed me a cup, the side of his thumb against the small bone of my wrist when he took a letter from my hand. Each touch went through me like a struck bell. I did not tell him. I could not tell him. He did not know how long it had been since anyone had touched me on purpose. My mother had died when I was 8. After her, the keep had taught me how to be a body that nothing landed on. Hands bumped me in corridors the way hands bump furniture. Men looked through me when they passed. I had not been touched on purpose. Soft, on purpose, meaning it, since my mother had held my face the night she died. And now a king kept brushing my wrist as if he were making sure I was real. I should have been afraid. I was afraid. Fear was a small, low thing under everything else, though. What was louder was the warmth. What was louder was that when he leaned into the corner of my shoulder in the late hours, when he was tired and there was no one there to see, I did not move. I did not move even when I could have. I did not move even when I should have. His forehead would come to rest just at the curve where my neck met my shoulder. He would breathe out. His breath was warm through the thin linen of my dress, His hand, always the right one, always, would land on my knee, or on the arm of the chair by my hip, and stay there, not moving, not asking. Just resting, and he would go quiet. He would go so quiet it frightened me. He had been loud before me, I know that now. Even silent, the Alpha King had been loud, the way a storm is loud even when it is not speaking. Near me he went soft as an animal asleep. The other handmaidens began to hate me in a new way. The old way had been the hate of strangers, the distrustful tilt of people who could not smell what I was and therefore did not know where to place me. The new way was the hate of women who had been in his wing for years and had never been allowed to bring him so much as a cup of water, and now watched me leave his rooms in the morning with my apron still warm from the fire he had slept beside. I heard two of them, once, in the hall. She's a common girl. She's not even pretty. He looks at her like she's the last loaf of bread in a famine. It's unnatural. It's something, I don't know what. There's no smell on her, nothing. You ever been near her? Makes my teeth itch. That's not a woman, that's a— Shut up. Shut up, she's coming. I went past them with my head down. My hands were shaking inside my apron. They were right. They were right about all of it. I was a common girl. I was not even pretty. And there was nothing on me for a wolf to find. I did not know how to tell him what I was. I did not know what I was. I only knew what my mother had told me, and my mother had told me as little as she could. You are sealed, Nera. You are sealed by the strongest hand I had left. The seal is your skin. It must not crack. If it cracks, they will find you. You must never be wanted enough to crack. That was the night I thought the word wanted in his direction for the first time, and felt the seal creak under my ribs like a frozen lake in sun. He rang the bell. I went. He was standing at the hearth this time, not sitting, not at the desk. He had taken off his doublet and rolled his sleeves to the elbow, and there was a smear of ink on the side of his jaw where he had rubbed it with an inky hand without thinking. He looked younger like that, almost a boy. You're pale, he said. I'm tired, Alpha. Ridin'. Sit down before you fall down. I sat. He did not. He stayed at the hearth with his arm along the mantel and his back to me for a long moment, as if he were gathering himself against something. Then he let out a breath and turned. He looked at me the way he had looked at me in the library, with the book open across his knee, the way he had looked at me the first night in his rooms, the way he looked at me when I came in with a cup in my hand, and he would not take it from me right away. He would take my wrist instead, and hold it for a heartbeat, and then let it go and lift the cup out of my fingers as if nothing had happened. He crossed the room and went to one knee in front of my chair. Ridin', quiet. He had never gone to a knee before me before. He had not gone to a knee before anyone in my memory. Kings do not kneel. He was going to one knee now, on the rug in front of my chair, the way a man kneels before a fire to coax it back to life, and he was taking my hand out of my lap, and he was turning it over, and he was pressing his cheek to my palm. I could not breathe. His stubble was rough against my skin. His mouth was just under the heel of my hand. He closed his eyes. You smell of nothing, he said. I know. Do you know what that does to me? No. My voice had gone to almost nothing. I don't know anything about wolves, Alpha. Ridin'. You are the only quiet place I have ever been. He did not open his eyes. His thumb had started, very slowly, to stroke the inside of my wrist. I did not know a quiet place existed. I did not know I was allowed one. Ridin', I am going to kiss you, he said, still with his eyes closed. Tell me to stop. I did not tell him to stop. He lifted his head from my palm. He was close. His eyes were the warm iron again, and they were on my mouth, and I watched him deciding, for a long, slow second, whether he could bear the weight of what he was about to do. He decided he could. His mouth came down on mine. It was not the kiss I had imagined, in the small and shameful imaginings I had let myself have at night in my bed. It was not a kiss that took. It was a kiss that rested. He settled his mouth against mine, like a man setting his head down at the end of a long, long war. His hand came up and cupped the side of my jaw with a careful, trembling gentleness that hurt to feel. He did not open my mouth. He did not ask for anything. He kissed me once, slowly and again, softer, and a third time, and then he pressed his forehead to mine and breathed out, shaking. "Forgive me," he whispered. "For what? For what I am going to do to keep you." I should have been afraid of that. I should have been very afraid. What I did instead was turn my face into the warm place at the side of his throat and breathe him in, the smell of him, the only scent I was allowed, because I had none of my own, and feel for the first time in my life full like a cup, full like something that had always been empty suddenly had water in it, and in my chest where the seal was, something shifted. A long, slow shift, the kind of shift that ice makes before it breaks. I froze. He felt it. Of course he felt it, his face against my throat, his wolf under my hands. He went very still. "Nira," he said low. "What was that?" "Nothing," I whispered. "It was nothing, Ryden, please." "Nira, please." He did not press me. He pulled back only enough to look at me. His eyes were full of a question I could not answer. He did not ask it. He only drew me carefully, very carefully, against his chest, and put his hand on the back of my head and held me there like I might fly apart. "Nothing," he said low into my hair. "All right, nothing." But I knew, and I think he knew, that the word was a lie between us now. That night I dreamed. I had not dreamed in years, not properly. My mother's seal had quieted the deep part of me that dreamed the way it had quieted everything else. I had slept the flat, waterless sleep of an empty jar for 18 years, and I had been grateful for it. That night, for the first time, the jar held water. I dreamed I was standing in a field. The grass was taller than I was. The sky was the color of the inside of a shell. There was no sun. There was no wind. There was a sound, low, far away, the way a voice sounds when it is being made under water, and the sound was shaping a word I almost knew. I turned in the grass. I could not find the voice. I could only feel it, the way you feel someone watching you from behind a door you cannot see. "Little shell," the voice said. I had never heard the voice. I knew the voice. I knew it the way a body knows the shape of its own bones. Little shell. Little shell with a man inside it now. "Do you think he will keep? Do you think he will hold? Do you think he will be enough?" I could not answer. My mouth did not work. "We will see," the voice said, very quietly. "We will see what he is made of. We will see what you are made of. We will see together, little shell. We will see what cracks first." I woke with a cry bitten off in my throat. Ryden's arm was already coming around my waist from the other side of the bed we had not yet shared on purpose. He had been waiting. He had felt me waking even through his own sleep, if it had been sleep, and he had reached for me without thinking. "Tell me," he said. I could not. I shook my head. I pressed my face into his chest, and I held on to his shirt with both hands, and I did not speak. He did not make me. He held me until I stopped shaking. He held me until the gray of morning came in at the windows. He held me until the bell rang for the day, and he held me through the bell and past the bell, until the steward knocked at the door and called through the wood that there was a rider on the southern road. He closed his eyes. "Stay here," he said. "Ryden, stay here in this bed. Do not leave this room. Do you hear me?" "Yes." He was on his feet. He was already a king again, already braced, already steel. He went to the window. He looked down. I watched his shoulders go back up into his ears where they had not been in weeks. "Ryden," I whispered. "What is it?" "The thing that was looking for you," he said, "has found us." Ryden's POV, a rider came at dusk. Ryden's POV, A rider came at dusk, not one of my riders, not one of any of the houses bound to me. A lone figure on a dark horse, coming up the southern road at the slow, unhurried pace of someone who wanted to be seen. My watchman rang the bell. I was on the wall before the horse had reached the outer gate. He was tall, taller than me, which was rare. He wore a coat the color of old iron and a hood drawn up against a wind that was not blowing. His horse, when it came into torchlight, was not sweating. It had run a long way, and it was not sweating. I disliked that as much as I disliked the man on its back. He drew rein under my gate and pushed his hood down. He was not young. He was not old. His face was the kind of face you forget immediately after looking at it, which is the only face more dangerous than a memorable one. His eyes were very pale. His mouth was thin. "Alpha King," he said. "Name yourself." "Vaelric of the Pale Orders." I had never heard the name. I had heard of the Orders. Every wolf child was told about the Orders the way human children were told about monsters under their beds, and as with the monsters under the beds, we all stopped believing in them at some point, and then went on believing in them anyway. The Pale Orders had been scourges. They had been burned out of this land before my grandfather was born. There was supposed to be no more of them. The Pale Orders are ended. Ended is a strong word. He smiled. It was a small, polite smile. It was a smile that had nothing behind it. "We are fewer, I would not say ended. What do you want at my gate?" "A conversation, that is all. And a cup of wine, if the Alpha is feeling hospitable. The roads have been long, and I am not what I used to be. You will have your conversation at the gate." "As you like." He folded his hands on the pommel of his saddle. "I am looking for a woman, Alpha King, a woman whose scent has been sealed. I have reason to believe she is in your keep." My wolf, who had been quiet beside me for weeks, lifted his head slowly inside my chest. I did not let him into my face. "There are no sealed women in my keep." "Forgive me, there is one." His eyes were very mild. "You would know, of course. You are an alpha of unusual sensitivity. You will have smelled her by now, or rather, you will have smelled the absence of her. I imagine it has been quite noticeable. You come to my gate and accuse my household of harboring a... I accuse no one of anything, Alpha. I am telling you what I am here for. She is not yours. She is strictly speaking not anyone's. She was hidden from us a long time ago by a woman who is no longer in a position to protect her. I have come a long way for her. I will take her and I will go, and you and your keep will never hear from me again." The hair on the back of my neck had gone up. It had gone up the way it went up before a killing. "Leave my gate. You do not understand what she is, Alpha King. Leave my gate. Let me be clearer." He leaned forward on his saddle. His pale eyes caught the torchlight and shone in a way that eyes should not shine. "She is not a woman. She has the shape of a woman. She has been given the habits of a woman. Her mother was very gifted, and my compliments to her bones wherever they lie. But the thing inside the shape, the thing you have been holding at night like a lucky stone, is older than you, and older than your father, and older than the wolves themselves. Keep her, and she will not stay a woman. She cannot. The seal is already cracking. I can smell it from here. You smell nothing at my gate. I smell the edges of it. That is how I found her. A perfect seal is the loudest silence in the world for those of us trained to hear it." He tilted his head like a bird listening. "A cracking seal is louder still. She has been, let me guess, letting herself be touched, letting herself be looked at, letting herself be wanted. Her mother told her not to. Her mother was, as I said, very gifted. She understood what she had done to her own child. You, forgive me, are unraveling her mother's work with every hour you keep her by your fire." I did not answer him. "I can end it quickly," he said. "That is the thing Alpha will not want to hear. I am not here to hurt her. I am here to take her and finish what her mother interrupted. It will not be painful for her. I am very good at my work. When it is done, the thing inside her will have its proper body and its proper voice, and the girl you have grown fond of, will have been the doorway it came through. That is what she was made for. That is what she is. You have been holding a door and calling it a woman. I could smell it too. I had not wanted to admit it. I had not wanted to admit it even to myself that some nights when she leaned into my shoulder, the air near her skin went not just empty but cold, the way air goes cold over a deep well. That the quiet I got from her had begun somewhere in the last week to take on a faint thin edge of something else. Something that was not peace but the silence a room gets right before a voice speaks in a language no one there knows. The seal was cracking. I had been ignoring it because I did not want to know. You will have her, Valric said pleasantly, or I will have her, the choice is yours. But the thing sleeping inside her wakes on the next moon whether you will it or not, and when it wakes, Alpha King, it will make a hollow of your keep. Your people will be in that hollow. So will you. Everything I am telling you is true, and everything I am telling you can be verified, and there is no version of this story in which she stays in your bed. My teeth were aching. I had not noticed that they had started to come down. Leave my gate, I said a third time, and this time my wolf was in my voice, and my voice was not mine alone. Valric inclined his head. As the Alpha wishes. I will camp inside of your walls. My horse does not tire. I am patient. I will be here when you change your mind. I would only ask, for both our sakes, that you not touch her again before the moon rises. Your blood in her mouth will speed what is already happening. He turned his horse. He rode slowly down the road back into the dark. His horse did not sweat. He did not look back. I stood on my wall for a long time after he was gone. My captain came up beside me. He did not speak. He was a good man. He knew when not to. Double the wall, I said. Triple it at the southern gate. No one in or out without my seal. Not a letter, not a cart, not a priest. If he comes back, shoot his horse first and ask his name after. Yes, Alpha. And my throat had closed a little. I had to make it open again. Send the handmaiden Nira to my rooms. Yes, Alpha. I stood on the wall until I could breathe again. Then I went inside. She was already there. Of course she was already there. She had felt the bell before it had been rung, the way she had been feeling everything before it happened for weeks. She was standing in the middle of my chamber with her hands at her sides. She was very pale. She was trying very hard not to cry and failing at it. He's here, she said. Isn't he? Yes, I thought I had more time. I crossed the room. I did not think. I put my hands on either side of her face and I tilted her head up and I looked at her, at the small, scentless, not pretty, entirely ordinary girl in whom an old and terrible thing was waking up, and my wolf, instead of recoiling, leaned harder into her. Tell me what you are, I said, low. Tell me now, everything. And she told me. Nira's POV, I had never said it out loud. I had never been allowed to. My mother had made me promise on her last night to take the shape of the words she had given me and live inside them and never, ever stretch them. Fever, Nira. Western villages, Nira. A common girl, Nira. Nothing special, Nira. Nothing at all. She had pressed the words into me like salt into meat so they would keep. Ryden had his hands on my face. He was waiting. My mother was not a village woman, I said. She was one of the Pale Orders. No, before that. My voice was shaking so hard I could barely hear myself. She was one of the women who served them. Before the orders fell, she ran when they were burning. She ran with me inside her. Go on. There is a thing, Ryden. There is, I don't know what to call it. My mother called it the silence. She said it was older than the wolves, older than scent, older than the first voices. It had no shape, it wanted one. It would put itself into women sometimes if the women were hollow enough, if there was room. It would grow inside them like a second heart, and when the woman was ready, it would come out and take her and walk. His hands were very still on my face. My mother was its next vessel. She was meant to be. Only she ran. She ran from the orders, and she ran from the thing they were feeding, and she hid me inside her instead. She put the thing into me, into the shape of a child. And then she sealed it. She sealed it with everything she had, which is why I have no scent. Yes, because scent is the first voice, and the thing inside you cannot have a voice. Yes, because if it has a voice, it will speak. Yes. I was crying now. I could not stop. Ryden, I have been so careful. I have been so careful my whole life. I have never been wanted. I have never been looked at. And you, I looked at you. You looked at me. His thumbs were moving on my cheekbones. He was not flinching. He was not pulling his hands back. He was looking at me like he had looked at me in his library, like I was the last loaf of bread in a famine, and I did not understand him. I did not understand how a man could know what was inside me and not let go. The seal is cracking, I said. It cracked when you kissed me. I know. It is going to break, Ryden. It is going to break on the next full moon. The man at the gate, he will take me before that, or he will take me after, and either way I will not be me. There will not be a me. There will be the thing, and it will wear me, and it will. No, Ryden, no. He pulled my forehead to his. He was breathing hard. He was breathing the way men breathe before a fight, and I had never been the thing a man breathed that way for. Listen to me, he said. Listen. The seal your mother put on you, she put it on you alone, with her own blood, with her own hand. That is why it is cracking. She is not here anymore to hold it. A seal like that does not want to be held by a dead woman. It wants to be held by a living one, by living blood. I don't. Mine. I stopped breathing. A mating bond, he said. A true one, blood to blood, my wolf into your blood. It will bind the seal to me. It will hold the thing down. It will not fix what you are. I cannot fix what you are. But it will keep the thing in the dark, and it will keep you in the light, and it will keep the man at the gate from taking you, because you will be mine in a way the old laws will not let him break. Do you understand? Ryden, do you understand, Nira? You don't know what you would be binding yourself to. I know. If the seal breaks later, if it breaks in 10 years, in 20, in 30, you will be bound to whatever comes out of me, and it will not be me, Ryden, and it will not spare you because you love it, and it will not. I know. It will not even know you. I know. He was holding my face so hard now it almost hurt. His eyes were wet. I had not known his eyes could be wet. I had thought of him as iron, as weather, as the things storms hide inside. And here he was, and his eyes were wet, and he was looking at me as if there were not a choice in the world. I have been awake for 7 years, he said. Do you understand what that is, Nira? I have been awake. I have not slept. I have not been still. I have not had a quiet thought. And then you walked into my rooms, and for the first time in 7 years, I was a man again instead of a held scream. I will not give that up. I will not. Not for the thing under your ribs. Not for the man at my gate. Not for the old laws. Not for the moon. Ryden, I choose you. Do you hear me? The seal, the thing, the man, the moon, I choose you. I will hold you. If the thing breaks me, it breaks me. I would rather be broken by you than whole by anyone else. I was sobbing. I could not help it. I had been holding so much for so long, and he was cutting it open with every word. You don't know me, I whispered. I know you enough. Ryden, you don't know. Nira. He put his mouth against my forehead. I know you enough. There was nothing left to argue with. I could have argued with a king. I could have argued with a law. I could not argue with a man who had gone to one knee in front of me on a rug in a room nobody was watching, and put his cheek against my palm, and told me I was the only quiet place he had ever been. Yes, I said. He lifted my face. Yes? Yes, Ryden. His eyes went yellow. Ryden's POV. I carried her to my rooms. I did not ask. I did not wait for her to walk. She had given me the word, and something in me that had been braced for a long time finally came unbraced, and I picked her up, one arm under her knees, one arm around her back, and she put her face into my throat and her hands into the front of my shirt, and I walked her through the long corridor and past the guards and into my bedchamber, and I kicked the door shut behind me with my heel. My wolf was very close to my skin. I had not let him this close to it since the night my father died. I had held him down for years with chains I had forged myself out of discipline and grief and the specific kind of fear that comes with knowing what your own teeth can do. Tonight, I was letting him up. Not all the way. I could not let him all the way up. If I let him all the way up, he would not be careful with her, and she had to be held carefully. What was in her was delicate. What was in her was going to try to break the moment I put my mouth on her throat. I had to be the kind of steady a man is when he is walking across ice with a child in his arms. I set her down on the edge of the bed. I went to my knees on the floor in front of her again. It was the second time I had done it, and it was already becoming a shape I wanted to spend the rest of my nights in, kneeling in front of her, my hands on the outside of her thighs, my face at the level of hers. Nira, yes, listen to me. When the bond takes, it will hurt. Not badly, but it will. Your body will feel mine. Your wolf, the one you were not born with, the one I am making for you tonight, it will feel mine. Your blood will hear my blood. The thing under your ribs will hear it too, and it will not like it. It will fight. It will fight through you. You may see things, you may hear things. It may try to speak with your mouth. Her eyes went wide. If it speaks, I said, do not listen to it again. Ryden. That is the word you come back to, no matter what it says, no matter what it sounds like. You come back to that. She nodded. She was shaking. She was shaking so hard her teeth were clacking, and I took her hands in mine and held them very still. Look at me. She looked at me. Do you trust me? She did not answer right away. That was not an insult. She did not know me. She did not know me enough to trust me, and we both knew it. She had known me for a handful of weeks, and most of those had been spent with her keeping her eyes on the rug. I was asking her to take the most intimate binding a wolf could give, from a wolf she had met as a stranger, against a thing that was going to try to take her mouth. She looked at me for a long time, then she said, Yes. Good. I stood. I took off my shirt. She did not look away. Her eyes were very wide and her mouth was open just a little, and her fingers were twisted in her skirts, and under the circumstances of the world, under any other circumstances, I would have taken a long time over what was happening next. I would have been slow. I would have undressed her the way a man undresses a woman he wants to remember having undressed. I would have kissed her in every place a mouth can be kissed and then some, and I would have made her make the small sounds she was not yet making, and I would have learned her the way I had learned my wolf, slowly, over many nights. I did not have many nights. I had until the moon cleared the eastern tower. I came back to her. I went to my knees again. I put one hand at the small of her back and the other at the nape of her neck. Bend, I said. Tilt your head, this way. She did. Her hair fell forward over my arm. Her throat was very thin. I could see her pulse jumping under the skin, the same way it had jumped the first night I had turned and found her standing in my rooms. That pulse had been keeping me alive for weeks. That pulse had been the metronome my sleep had finally found. I had kissed that pulse once, with my mouth closed, in the library, when she had dozed for a moment against my shoulder and I had bent my face into her hair. Now I was going to open my mouth over it. "Ryden." Her voice was very small. "Yes, I'm frightened. I know. Tell me something, anything. Tell me what you want afterwards." I had not expected the question. It landed in my chest, and something there, something I had not known was still working, lifted. "You in my bed," I said. "In the morning, tomorrow morning, and every morning after, breathing. That is all I want. You in my bed tomorrow morning, breathing." Her eyes filled. "All right," she whispered. "All right. Ryden, yes. Do it now before I can't." I did it. My teeth came down. I was careful. I was so careful. I found the place where her pulse was loudest, the soft hollow just under the angle of her jaw, and I set my mouth against it, and I bit. She made a sound. It was not a scream. It was a small, surprised sound, the sound someone makes when they have been holding a breath for a very long time and have finally had to let it out. Her hands came up and fisted in my hair. She did not pull me off. She pulled me in. My blood met hers. I had been told when I was a boy what the mating bond was. I had been told by my father, who had taken one, and by my mother, who had been on the other end of it, and by every old wolf in the keep who had an opinion on the matter. None of them had prepared me for it. None of them had told me that there is a moment, in the taking of a bond, in which a man's wolf goes out of his own body and into another's, and for a stretched heartbeat he is standing on the shore of his own life watching his soul walk into a woman's chest. It was terrifying. It was the most right thing I had ever done. I felt her. I felt her blood take mine. I felt her ribs become a room my wolf knew how to walk in. I felt the small warm flicker that was the start of her own wolf, mine because I had given her one, because she had been born without, kindle, confused, like a candle in a room it had never been in. And then I felt the thing. The thing was not warm, the thing was not a candle, the thing was a weight at the bottom of a deep water, and it lifted its head, and I felt it lift, and I felt it see me, and I felt it snarl inside her ribs without a mouth. Her hand tightened in my hair. She made a different sound. "Ryden." Her voice was hers, just barely. "I'm here. It's talking. Don't listen. Nira, my name, give me my name. Ryden, again. Ryden." The voice that came out of her then was not hers. I had prepared for it. I had known it was coming. I had still not truly prepared for it. It was old. That was what I was not ready for. It was old. It was older than language. The word it made with her mouth was not a word I knew, but I knew what it meant, the way you know what a grave means without anyone having to say. It meant, let me out, let me up, let me finish. I bit harder. I drove my wolf harder into her. I gave her more of me than I had meant to give. I gave her the 7 years of not sleeping and the 10 years before that of not feeling and the whole strung-tight length of my life, and I poured it into her ribs around the thing, and I made a cage of myself, and I locked it. The thing screamed. Not with sound. I do not know how to describe the kind of scream a thing that has never had a mouth makes when a mouth it was counting on is taken away. It was the sound under sound. It was the sound a room makes when a door that was about to open is shut instead. My ears did not hear it. My bones did. Nira's fingers loosened in my hair. "Ryden," she said. Her voice was hers. "Ryden, it's under something. I can feel it. I can feel it under. I know. It is so angry." "I know, sweet girl. I know." I lifted my mouth from her throat. There was blood on my chin. There was blood on her collarbone. The 2-hole mark was already beginning to close, already beginning to silver at the edges, already beginning to become the thing that would, for the rest of both our lives, announce to every wolf who saw her that she was mine, and the thing in her was mine to keep, and anyone who went for her went through me first. She was crying. She was crying and laughing a little, a hysterical, unstrung laugh. "I can feel you," she whispered. "I know. I can feel you in my chest. I can feel your wolf. Is that you? Is that you, Ryden?" "That's me." "Oh." She put her face into my shoulder and she cried. I held her. I held her until my arms shook. I held her through the aftershocks. The small convulsions that were her new wolf settling, the smaller ones that were the thing beneath, snarling through the bars of the cage I had built. I held her until the moon cleared the eastern tower and nothing came for us. I held her until I felt the man at the gate, somewhere below, turn his horse. After a long while, she lifted her head from my shoulder. "He's going," she whispered. I can feel him going." "Yes. Why can I? You have my wolf now. My wolf can feel what is near the walls. You are using my senses until yours finish coming in." I brushed the hair back from her damp forehead with fingers that were not quite steady. "You will have your own, in time." "My own. Your own." She pressed her mouth against the base of my throat. Not a kiss, just her mouth, resting. She was shaking so finely I could barely see it. I could only feel it under my hands. "I have a scent," she said suddenly. "Ryden, I know. I can smell me. I know. I smell like, I know what you smell like." "What?" She looked up, her eyes were wet and astonished. "What do I smell like?" I had to breathe for a second before I could trust my voice. "Rain on warm stone," I said, "and the inside of an old bell, and something I do not have a word for yet, something that is still arriving." She put her face back into my throat and made a small, broken sound, and I understood belatedly that no one in her life had told her what she smelled like because no one in her life had been able to smell her. It was the first description of her own body she had ever been given. I sat on the floor of my bedchamber with her in my arms, and I looked down at her, and for the first time since my father had died, I was not alone in my own chest. I did not sleep. Not that night. I could not sleep. I was afraid if I slept I would wake up and she would not be there. So I stayed awake, and I watched her breathe. And somewhere down inside her, under the small new wolf I had given her, under my blood in her veins, under the soft living animal of her, the thing that was older than wolves, older than scent, older than voice, breathed slowly and evenly. Breathed, waiting, near as POV. I woke up in a bed I had never slept in. There was light, there was sun, there was the smell of wood smoke and linen, and, under everything else, the warm, heavy animal smell of the man whose arm was draped across my waist. I had a scent. That was the first thing I understood, before I had even opened my eyes. I had a scent of my own, low and shy, twined up under his like ivy around a tree. I had a self the world could find. I had never had that before. I was not, yet, afraid. Ryden was awake. Of course he was awake. I do not think he had slept. His eyes were on my face when I opened mine, and they were tired, and they were soft, and they were more alive than any eyes I had ever seen. "Good morning," he said. My voice was hoarse. "Good morning. You are in my bed." "I am. Tomorrow morning." "What?" "It is tomorrow morning. You are in my bed. You are breathing. That was what I wanted." I laughed. I did not know I was going to. It came out small and wet and surprised. He smiled. I had never seen him smile before. It was a small, crooked thing, not quite used to itself. It made him younger. It made him a person instead of a king. I put my fingers against the side of his face. "You look tired." "I'm not. I am, but I'm not." "Ryden." "Nira. Is he gone? For now?" "For how long?" His thumb moved across my hip. "Long enough. He'll come back." "He will come back. Or another will. The pale orders do not forget. But he cannot take what is bound, not the way it is bound. He will look for another road. He will not find one before we are ready. Ready for what? For him. For the next one. For whatever wakes under the next moon. I swallowed. You said you could not fix what I am. I said that. You can't. I can't. Then what, Ryden, what do we do? What do we do when it moves again? I felt it move last night, at the end. I put my hand over my own heart. You pushed it down. You pushed it down, Ryden, but I can still feel it. It is still there. It is still waiting. What do we do when it... I will push it down again. Every moon, every night, every hour, however long, as many times as it takes. Ryden, I chose you. I know, but I chose you, Nira. I did not choose the easy parts of you. I did not know what the easy parts of you were when I chose you. I chose you whole, the thing you are hiding, the thing that is hiding in you, all of it. I chose all of it. Do you understand? I understood. I had spent my whole life being told I was not allowed to be wanted, because wanting would break me. He was telling me he had wanted me knowing I was going to break, and he was going to hold the pieces every time. I did not have words for that. I did not have the shape of a thank you large enough. I put my face into his chest and I breathed him in. Under his warmth, under the smoke and the linen, under the new hum of the bond in my own blood, under all of it, I felt the thing stir in its cage. It did not speak. Not yet. It had learned in the night that my mouth was not its mouth anymore, but it turned in its dark. It turned slowly, like a sleeping wolf turning toward a sound it has not placed. It turned toward the small warm light of the bond between me and the man whose arm was heavy on my waist, and it began, very quietly, to listen. My mother had said the world had no room for what I was. My mother had been wrong. The world had made a room. The room had a bed in it. The room had a window. The room had an Alpha King in it, and the Alpha King had made a cage of himself around the thing that should not have existed, and he had called it home. I had a scent now. It was small. It was shy. It smelled, Ryden told me later, of rain on stone, and of the inside of old bells, and of a thing that was still becoming. It would grow. The thing in me would grow with it. They would grow together, the two of them, twin animals under my ribs, and one of them would be mine and one of them would not be, and the small new wolf of me would keep the older thing quiet for as long as the bond in my blood held. How long would that be? I did not ask. He did not tell me. We had this morning, we had tomorrow morning, we had the morning after that. Later, when he slept, really slept, not the soldier's half-sleep of a man with one hand on a blade, but the deep, open, defenseless sleep of someone who trusts the room he has closed his eyes in. I got out from under his arm and went, barefoot, to the long mirror across the chamber. I had not looked at myself in a mirror in months. There was no point. The face had always been the same small face, and the eyes had always been the soft river-stone eyes my mother had given me, and there had never been anything looking back that I had not already known. I looked now. The girl in the glass was me. That was the first thing. She was still me. Same mouth, same thin shoulders, same pale skin. The silver bite at the side of her throat, where his teeth had been, had already healed into a clean pair of crescents, like two small moons. It was the eyes. The eyes were still the soft river stone of the girl I had been. But if I stood very still, and if the light caught them right, the way the dawn was catching them slanting in through his eastern window, there was another color underneath, a color there was no name for, a color that was not in the world. It moved, slow, behind my iris, the way a shape moves under the surface of deep water. It saw me looking. It did not look away. I put my fingertips against the glass. The thing in the mirror put its fingertips against the glass on the other side, the way a reflection does, and then, just for a heartbeat, just for long enough that I would wonder for the rest of my life if I had imagined it, it smiled with a mouth that was not quite mine. Behind me, in the bed, Ryden murmured my name in his sleep. I turned from the mirror. I went back to him. I put my face against the skin over his heart, where it was warmest, where the bond beat loudest, where the small new wolf he had given me could curl up against the side of his. I closed my eyes. Under my ribs, the older thing turned in its cage. It did not speak. Not this morning. It had time. I put my mouth against the silvered mark at my throat where his teeth had been, and I said his name softly to myself to practice. Raiden. His arm tightened around my waist. Under my ribs, something old and patient lifted its head, and listened and, for now, only for now, lay back down. The end. If you like this story, or if this story stayed with you even a little, take a second to like, subscribe, and tell me what part hit you the most in the comments. I'm here reading, replying, and building these stories with you, so your voice actually shapes what comes next.